Today we have a low-powered amplifier from the late 80s by Alphasonik. Some of you may wonder why they even make an amp with this little bit of power. And when I say a little bit of power, you'll find out here in a little bit. But first, let's get it out of the box, find out what it's all about, and then we'll talk about the power output and what we're going to use it for. Unbelievably, this Alphasonik PMA-2030 was brand new in the box, literally from around 1988, 1989. And I took it out to make this video earlier of the AudioVox Vox box. You can check link in the video description if you want to see that. But let's go back to fall of 88, winter of 89 in the Crutchfield magazine, where they mention, hey, here's a new product, the Alphasonik PMA-2030 for $119. That's right, $119 in 1988 is equivalent to around $315, accounting for inflation in 2024. Alphasonik was definitely one of the budget brands back in the day, and this PMA-2030 was kind of a bridge between a head unit, which a lot back then didn't even have power, and the ones that did were only 5 to 10 watts. So this at 30 watts by 2 was ample power for a lot of people to use on 6x9, 6.5s, or these full range boxes like the AudioVox that I showed in that previous video. Now this Alphasonik is what I call just a gain block style amplifier. No frills here. Nothing too exciting. Has a level control from 1 volt to 100 millivolts. Also has RCA inputs for left and right. And that's literally it here on this one side. There's no bass controls, no crossover controls, nothing to muddy your sound, just pure amplification. So then we'll do a fly over here. You can see we'll get to the dimensions here a little bit later in the video. But you can see the heatsink, it is black finished. It does have some writing on the top that tells us about the specs. It also has a PMA-2030 stereo power amplifier by Alphasonik, and minimum continuous power, 30 watts per channel into 4 ohms or 8 ohms, or 60 watts bridge into 8 ohms or 4 ohms, 12 gauge for your power and ground, and it has the hated Molex plug for the speaker connections. Now this one has speaker outputs as well as speaker level inputs, in case you didn't have RCAs. Rating stereo, 4 ohms 30 watts by 2, 2 ohms 30 watts by 2. Bridged 8 ohms 60 watts, 4 ohms 60 watts. 10 amp inline fuse is included. For amplifiers back in the late 80s, this one's pretty small. 7.2 inches on the long side, 5.9 inches for the width, and 2.1 inches for the height. And as you can see here compared to my hand, it does kind of fit in the palm of your hand. And these were definitely used back in the day for people powering mids and highs typically, either components up front, or like I said before, 6x9s or some of these full range boxes, they work well for all those situations. Now let's get it hooked up, get it plugged up, and see how it sounds. All right, let's try it with a speaker and see if it works. Sounds like it's working. Here we have the Alphasonik PMA-2030 hooked up. Time frame equivalent about to the AudioVox VoxBox VB1. This was available at big box stores, Kmart, Walmart, auto parts stores, probably Sears, etc. And this one, you know, not so much available at places like that, but it was an inexpensive 2-channel amplifier that probably matches up pretty good with this. So we've got it wired up. Let's go ahead and power it up and see how it sounds with some music. Unfortunately, this Alphasonik doesn't have any kind of LED to let us know that it's on, but I believe it's on. Let's try Smokey's Lounge.
What tests me is y'all, but I check the ride. A lot of y'all seem to want to test my pride. That's cool, cause I've never been no less than 9. 4 G's on the system, any less a crime. When choke breaks open when I flex the vibe. A windshield crack and expensive prize, but it's worth every penny, all cents aside. What's sex aside? Me from you is the check aside. Better check the signs, put some checks aside. We've got sun down and MDX inside. 140 DB club, feel blessed for mine.
This little 30-watt amp is making these AudioVox speakers get down. Well, let's move on to the amp dyno test so we can find out what the true output power of this amplifier is. Can it really do 30 watts by 2? We shall find out here using the amplifier dyno, showing the power output in watts on the left, the ohm load in the middle, the voltage of the dyno on the right. We'll also have a clamp so we can calculate the amplifier's efficiency.
Ready?
First up, we'll try the 2-channel test where the amplifier is rated at 4 ohms, 30 watts by 2 at 14.4 volts. We will run the test at 1 kilohertz. So let's fire it up here. Try it on the dyno, see if we can get that 30 watts by 2. Right at it. 31 and 28. Our voltage is like a tenth off there at 14.34. And then dynamically, we easily get the 30 watts per channel, closer to 40. We get 39 and 38 at 14.42. Looking good. Now let's move on to the 2 ohm test. Again, 1 kilohertz. It's rated 30 watts by 2. Constant power amp back in the day. I don't know, it seems kind of weird. But let's try it certified here. And you can see the power is literally almost identical. 29 and 26 at 14.33. So it doesn't give you any more power. It is kind of constant power. But it is also interesting to see the dynamic test here almost double, or literally is pretty much double, the certified test here at right at 60 watts at 14.4 volts. Now let's bridge the amplifier mono, and how we do that, we use the left positive, which is gray, and the right negative, which is green. The diagram is included in the owner's manual, which I'll have scanned and I'll have put in the video description of this amplifier over on archive.org so you can get that if you want it. Let's try 8 ohms first, see if it'll do that 60 watts. We are running 40 hertz test here, and we're good, a little bit shy. We got 54 at 14.34. Let's try it up to the clipping point and see if we can get that 60 watts. And we get right at it, 60 watts at 14.32. Then we're going to run the dynamic test. Let's see if it gives us those dynamic numbers like it did with the 1 kilohertz track. Doesn't look like it at 8 ohms because we're right around 60. It did jump up to 66. Is it going to go any higher? Nope, 66 at 14.38. Now let's try it bridged at 4 ohms mono where it's rated 60 watts at 14.4. See if we can get that 60 watts certified to 1% distortion. No, we're a little shy again. 53 watts at 14.3. We'll reset the dyno here, try it uncertified to clipping. See if we can get that big 60 watts of power. And yes, once again, we get right at it. 60 watts, 14.25 volts. What about dynamic? Using the 40 hertz track here, 4 ohms bridge. Check it out. We're slinging the big numbers, 85 watts. Can it go any higher? I think that's all the juice it has. 85 at 14.27. And here's the amp dyno result sheet. You can pause this if you want to see all the different tests. At the very end of this, I will show a low voltage test if you want to see that closer to 12 volts. But let's take the bottom panel off, find out what this amplifier looks like inside. And yes, if you've seen the Korean style amplifiers from the late 80s, early 90s, you will recognize what we have going on here. Single-sided circuit board, all these through the hole components, and capacitors from our friend Samyang. And these still seem to be working, probably dried up a little bit over the years, but 35 volt, 1000 microfarad here on the power supply side. And then for the outputs, 50 volt, 1000 microfarad. Again, Samyang capacitors. I think a lot of people slept on these Alphasonik amps back in the day because in my opinion, they're pretty good sounding amplifiers and they're very reliable. I mean, I've had several of these older ones and they've all worked and not really had that many problems with them. I think the monoblock one I had issues with, but overall, these did very well. I'm also curious to know what brands or models you guys know about that did pretty well back then that still might do well today, because I'm always interested to see. Well, let's turn that voltage down a little bit and try the test again with lower voltage to see what we get. Let's try the 4 ohm run stereo for the Alphasonik here with lower voltage. Should matter because this is an unregulated amp, so see how much power we put out here. All right, 24 and 22 at 12.67.